And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on our platform running across the Louisiana plain, where we are elevating the cause of constitutional conservatism and conservative candidates, and slowly but surely, day by day, draining the Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by Louisiana First citizens like you. Hello, State of Freedom family. Thank you for inviting us to join a few minutes of your day. You are the absolute best team we could ask for. We are only here because of your encouragement, your prayers, and your financial support. If you are looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please visit our website at freedomstate.us. As a reminder, Election Day is coming up. And as before, we are encouraging all State of Freedom listeners and your families to make a plan to vote in person on Election Day if you can. And today, we are continuing the Race to the Finish series. We hope that you enjoy it. Please share these episodes with friends and family members who live in these districts, because you know by now that these races will really, really make the critical difference in the makeup and the culture of our legislature. As a reminder, you can send them short, punchy clips of the interviews with these candidates from our YouTube and Rumble channels, and the links to those are both in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. Well, today we have a special treat for you. We are being joined by a small government, pro-life, constitutionalist candidate, Dixon McMakin, who's running for state rep in District 68. Before we meet Dixon, let me read the scripture of the day. It's Psalm chapter 82, verses 1 through 5, and it says, "All rise, for God now comes to judge as he convenes heaven's courtroom. He judges every judge and rules in the midst of the gods, saying, 'How long will you judges refuse to listen to the voice of true justice and continue to corrupt what is right by judging in favor of the wrong? Defend the defenseless, the fatherless, and the forgotten, the disenfranchised and the destitute. Your duty is to deliver the poor and the powerless, liberate them from the grasp of the wicked, but you continue in your darkness and ignorance while the foundations of society are shaken to the core.'" And that's a pretty serious, that's a pretty sobering psalm, but I believe that we are in a time where the Lord will judge the judges. The corruption of the justice system in Louisiana, in the United States, and in the nations of the world, I think has reached absolutely intolerable levels. And the Lord will rise, and I believe he is rising on behalf of those who have suffered injustice, and he's rising to judge the judges who have not lived up to their oath to execute true justice. I really honestly believe we are in an Isaiah 1:26 time, and we'll see it fulfilled. In that scripture, the Lord promised to restore our judges and our lawyers as at first, so that we can live in a place where justice can be trusted, and a place that is called righteous.
Yes, and part of restoring our state to a place where justice can be trusted is by returning our legislature to the citizens, because many citizens feel very alienated at this point and very disillusioned about their leaders who run and proclaim certain things and then get into the legislature and do things very differently. Well, today on our show, as you said, Danielle, we have Dixon McMakin, who's a first-time candidate for office, who by all indications is someone who is a man of real conviction and real service to his community. Dixon, it is such a pleasure to have you on today. How are you, sir?
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure.
Absolutely. Dixon, before we get started here, tell the listeners what part of Baton Rouge, or a number of state rep seats in Baton Rouge, just kind of want to know as they listen whether they will have the opportunity to vote for you. What part of East Baton Rouge Parish does your district cover?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, District 68, the northern border is Jefferson Highway, so anything south of Jefferson Highway. And then you go from the LSU Lakes and Dalrymple all the way out to PQ. So I get all those terrible exits on the interstate. I get Dalrymple, Acadian, College, Essen, Bluebonnet, Segan, out to PQ. Southern border is Perkins Road and Bayou de Planche. So I tell people, not only everyone in the district, but around the state and really around the South, I promise you, you have been stuck in traffic in District 68, and that's one of the things I'm going to try to fix the legislature.
That's beautiful. And that's at the very top of your priority list on your website. And Lord knows we need it in there. And we'll get into a little bit more about your proposals on the transportation issues in a minute. Dixon, talk a little bit about your background, professional background, and how you got into politics and what made you decide to run for office.
Yeah, I'm currently a financial advisor at Altus Wealth Management. I have my insurance license as well with Altus Benefit Solutions. I'm a lawyer here in town. I am not a trial lawyer. I'm what I call a dead person lawyer. So I do wills, trusts, successions, power of attorneys, and notary work. And then pretty cool, LSU even has me emceeing events. So I've PA announced for women's basketball, volleyball, softball, soccer, and got to do the LSU football spring game last year. Born and raised in Baton Rouge, started Jefferson Baptist in St. Aloysius, then Catholic High School, went on to LSU undergrad, and then stayed at LSU for 4 more years to get my graduate degree of a JD and an MBA. And I've been just working in the community, volunteering, and being in and out of District 68 every day. One thing about being a financial advisor is every day I work with small business owners, people that work for small businesses, employers, employees, and I get to hear directly from them on the challenges they face of why they even stay in Louisiana. And it's so frustrating to hear that when they talk about how life would be easier to go to Texas, Mississippi, Tennessee, and if those folks at the legislature could just fix a few things, make it easier on me to do business here. I want to stay here, but y'all are making it tougher for me to stay. And that'll be some of the initiatives I put forth to the legislature, getting rid of the red tape regulations and having small business owners want to stay in Louisiana and making it easier on them to stay as well. And looking forward to doing that for the people of District 68.
Yeah. And it's amazing. The issues that small businesses face in Louisiana are so significant. And to have someone with your background to go in with a real knowledge to address those issues, I think is going to be immeasurably important to do that. I want to talk for a minute, Dixon, about your volunteer work, and the reason why I want to do this is because I have some personal experience with it. My son is a new member of an organization called Fraternus here in Baton Rouge, which is a Catholic organization, as you know, which is designed to teach young men how to be virtuous, how to be holy, how to be good, loyal members of the community. And I go in there the other day to bring my son to Fraternus to go in and meet the guys. And who do I meet in there but the Dixon McMakin, who was a central part of this growing and vibrant organization to form good young Christian men. Talk to the listeners a little bit about Fraternus and why that is such an important part of your volunteer work.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. We started this past year when we saw a need at St. Aloysius and around the Baton Rouge community for young men to be taught the virtues and the teachings of Jesus outside of just a Sunday mass or service, whatever that might be where you attend. And one thing we saw too is that not every young man has a father figure that is religious. And we know all the studies will tell you that if there's a religious father in the home, then that young man, those children are going to be religious, and it's going to carry on. They're not going to commit crimes. They're going to be better educated, everything like that. So what could we do as a church community from 5th graders all the way up? We even have some gentlemen that are in their 80s and come, and every Wednesday or almost every Wednesday from 6 to 8, we have scripture reading. We have a man deliver what we call the King's message on a virtue, how to live a virtuous life. We pray, we meet in small groups, we share a meal. And it's about forming that community of men together and getting mentors of men that aren't just your father or other men you know. I can just tell you on the campaign trail, actually walking a couple of the neighborhoods, some of the young men that are in Fraternus would answer the door. And they'd be like, "Hey, Mr. Dixon." They're like, "Hey, man, how you doing? Is your mom or dad home? That's who I came to meet." Like, "Yeah, let me go get them." And I'll hear them, "Hey, and Mom, Dad, Mr. Dixon's here." And, that opportunity to lead young men to be virtuous men. And we know that if you do that, you're going to have better classmates. You're going to have better people in the workforce. You're going to have better bosses. You're going to have men that are better husbands and that are better fathers. So if we can just have that trickle philosophy, that just one positive interaction with a young man or an old man along the way can make such the difference. And we're excited. We're already in discussions with other church parishes and groups here in town to bring it to their groups. And it's really been so beneficial. And anytime you think that you're going to give and you're going to be influencing other people, you get it 10 times back talking to these young men. I actually lead the 5th grade group at Aloysius, and some of the prayers and these young men that are praying for their families, praying for teachers and classmates, it's just so inspiring to know that there are faith-filled men out there, and that's what hopefully we can get for our future of Baton Rouge and Louisiana. We need great legislators to get down to the Capitol and have a reason for them to stay here.
Yeah, that's such a great point, because, you mold these good young men as you're doing, make sure they grow up, become productive members of society and virtuous men, and then they leave the state so they can bring their influence and their services to another state. So hopefully you're going to be able to hit both ends of that stick by forming them properly as you're doing, and then getting in the legislature and creating, as you said, all the reasons for them to stay in Louisiana.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. It is beautiful, and I just am very blown away by that, and I just thought it was very important to get that out there. Is there a particular issue when it comes to making the leap to run for public office? Is there a particular issue that prompted you to make the decision to run for office this time, this cycle?
Yeah, I think it ties into what I call the 3 stool issue and the top. So the 3 main issues we've seen and that we knew going into this were going to be crime, was going to be education, and was going to be jobs. And then on top of that 3-pronged stool is insurance. And one of the main things about getting into this race for me was having that business background when it comes to that. Being a financial advisor, an insurance agent, like I mentioned earlier, every day when you're talking to small business people, the owners, the employers, and then the people that write the products for them, right? The insurance carriers and all those people, having that knowledge background of what they see to practically go and fix it, I thought was something that was missing for our Baton Rouge group and for Louisiana, having that business background. I'm Series 7 licensed. There's only one other rep in the entire state that has his Series 7. It's Bo Boye out of the Lafayette, New Iberia region. And, talking to him, like, man, it'd be so great to have someone else that has that training and that knowledge on those financial issues to help me. And then outside of the issues, to me, was when they redrew the districts, they added in a particular part of town called South Downs, Ruzon, and Pollard. And those are the people I grew up talking to, working with, learning from. I tell people all the time, it's so neat. My 5th grade basketball coach lives in my district, and I get to see him all the time. And we talk about that he coached me when I was a young man, and now he's so proud of the lawyer, financial advisor candidate I've become, and it just makes him proud. And you get to hear directly from those people when you're in church with them every day. You're going to different events with them. I mean, just this weekend, or, this will air after this weekend, but we have the St. Aloysius Fair, and I'm going to be out there every day, which I'm already doing anyway. But now people know the guy that they get to go complain to, I guess, and tell them their ideas and what they want passed. And when you're a local person, that means a lot to a lot of people, and they know you care and you aren't just doing it for a position.
It does. It means so much to people, and I've seen that here. Dixon, I don't know if you know, but I'm down in Terrebonne, and I just have been getting to know some of the candidates, not just in my district, but through the State of Freedom. We've gotten to know a lot of candidates, and it's just amazing to see how open people are to ideas, and how open candidates, not only candidates, but legislators are to hearing from people about the things that concern them. And I think that servant's heart is positioning you so well for this run.
Yeah, I love that when someone says, we're not public officials, we're public servants. And you have to have that servant mentality when you go into this. I was actually thinking about, that scripture y'all read, and 2 things came to mind for me. One was John 8:7, which is a passage I was taught in the 5th grade by Miss Hill, was when Jesus tells them, who be he to cast the first stone, the one that is sinless. And, instead of going to judge somebody, how about you look at yourself first and you contemplate that before you go and judge other people and think about them. And then I also was thinking about in Henry VI, when they say the first thing we need to do is kill all the lawyers. And a lot of people think that's because they don't like lawyers, but the butcher in Henry VI says that because he wants chaos. And he doesn't want people that bring stability to issues, that don't hold people accountable in matters. And that's something you're going to get from me. I have 4 pillars in this campaign and how I plan to practice: efficiency, effectiveness, accountability, and transparency. And I think being pillar-based and knowing those are going to carry me through my time, whatever I do as a public servant, I'm going to be blessed to always keep those in mind, and it'll serve the people of District 68 and Louisiana well.
That's fantastic. And, back to your Henry VI reference, I think also killing the lawyers, I think they wanted to make sure that people didn't understand the law themselves. And that's really a big part of the problem that we face in Louisiana, is that people don't really understand the system. The system has gotten so complex that it's almost impossible to understand. I mean, Chris and I have railed time and time again about the language. Well, mostly me, because Chris has the lawyer background to be able to understand the amendments. But to parse through the language in amendments, when people go into the voting booth, I mean, they want to prohibit. A yes is a prohibiting. I feel like there's so many things that work to complicate matters for citizens, and it's absolutely important to have people who understand the law. It's also important, as you I think alluded to earlier, with cutting the red tape, to making the law easier to understand for the rest of us.
Yeah, I'll give you a practical example of that one. I notarized a lot of things for clients and friends, and had a young man that was advancing in his plumbing career. He came to my office. He had to get a sheet notarized, and just asked me, said, "Hey, man, if you were doing this somewhere else, would you have to do this?" He said, "No, I think Louisiana is one of the only states that makes you do this." So you had to waste your time, find a notary, pay him or not pay him, whatever that might be, just so you could advance your career. He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, that's something we got to fix."
That's crazy. Well, let's shift to the campaign. So you ran already in the primary with a crowded field of 5 candidates for state rep for District 68. You led the field, as Chris said, and now you are in a race against a Democratic opponent. Why is District 68 going to go conservative in this election?
I think consistently District 68 has had a Republican rep. But besides that, I think it's our values and our business background. We are a very affluent area in town, in the state of Louisiana as well. And we have a lot of business owners, people that work for businesses, small businesses especially. We also represent the health district in District 68, a lot of doctors, nurses, healthcare workers as well. And they see that a bloated government does not help people. A more taxing government does not help people. A government that is efficient and effective, and really a government that just stays out of the way. Let me live my life. Let me do what I need to do. Stay out of my way is a government that people want, and especially in District 68. So this is a district, you look at it, I was able to get 32% to lead the way. The Democrat got 31. The other Republican got 31% as well. So just between the two Republicans, that's 63% Republican vote. And we're expecting that same turnout to happen on November 18th in just 25 days.
Yeah. And as you said, Dixon, it's not just because you have an R by your name. It's because of the values that you represent that are far more consistent with the values of our district, which is, as I said, my voting district, than your opponent. There's no question about that. Speaking of business, speaking of having an economy that makes people want to come to Louisiana, one of the big issues that people in our district have, Dixon, that they talk to us about over and over again, my neighbors and other people, is the traffic infrastructure issue. And DOTD's plan to shut down interstate for 3 or 4 miles, 1 lane each direction. People are very concerned. And as you said, in your district, you have a lot of exit ramps, interstate runs right through your district. Is your concern about the infrastructure as it relates to traffic and transportation, and why is it important that we do something about that and address that issue?
Yeah, it's a crucial topic. As you know, I-10 literally splits my district in two, and all the cars that are on I-10 every year. We say I-10, but really you have to say I-10, I-12, because that's I-12 is where you get all the traffic from the eastern states. Any car that is passing through Louisiana from Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, most likely travels I-10, then hits I-12 and comes through Baton Rouge. And so to shut down the interstate, we actually experienced this a few years ago when we had an ice storm in Baton Rouge, and they shut down the entire interstate. And if you want to talk about the ultimate failure of infrastructure and how to be prepared, that was the day to see it live in action. And so anyone at that time, if they thought at any time to shut down the interstate along I-10 to one lane or any of those plans to do that is just detrimental to the business community, to getting kids to school. I can give you a practical example of that is a doctor that I know, a voter for me, lives here, works in District 68, and he talks about, hey, when the bridge traffic is so bad, I lose sometimes 30% of my clients in a day because they just can't make it. They get too frustrated. And at the same time, there's a good chance I have a nurse that can't make it or she's going to be late. And then that throws the entire schedule off. So when I'm trying to plan my day, 8 to 5, or really most doctors are kind of earlier than that, 7 to 4 to get those surgeries in early, just those little wrinkles of time when it's not efficient, you can't plan on it, that messes up my entire day, my entire week, and just shuts down my business. And we can't have that in Louisiana, especially in District 68. So I'm going to be a harsh critic of all those. A lot of those plans are already happening right now, but I know that there still is some accountability that we can have on those plans to find out what they're going to do. I'll give your listeners a practical example. If you are in District 68 and you're at the Mr. Gaddy's on Perkins at Essen, right near the hospital, I want you to look at that interchange the next time you're there. There's 4 interchanges. Only one of them is 2 straight lanes and 2 turn lanes. The rest of them are 2 straight and 1 turn. Well, what would make it more efficient, more effective? If all 4 of them were 2 straight and 2 turn. Well, Dixon, that might take some construction or this and that. No, it doesn't. The concrete is already there. The space is already there. We just have to restripe it. But they're not thinking like that. They're thinking they have to do a study, in an engineering study. No, all we have to do, go restripe it, make that one interchange more efficient, more effective. Don't even have to change the lights right there, and we can get people moving in and out of the district more efficiently. And just that's a little example of the things I'm going to bring as a legislature to bring and hold those people accountable and say, why aren't we doing this? Let's think about things a little more creatively than we have been to get people moving in and out of our district.
Yeah, and Dixon, one of the, in addition to the issues relating to people getting to and from work, getting to and from the doctor, to and from school, with that kind of a log jam in traffic, another big issue that people are very concerned about is that DOTD's plan does not have a viable hurricane evacuation plan. What happens if we're in a situation where we got one lane in each direction and we've got a hurricane, a Cat 5 bearing down on South Louisiana? That is a very legitimate concern. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, so that's something that obviously the people in District 68 and around Baton Rouge, we complain the most about this interstate idea. But for your listeners that are in the 337, the 504, Acadiana, New Orleans, wherever that might be, if a hurricane's bearing down on you, especially, Acadiana, right? Let's say the hurricane is coming towards them, it's heading north. Well, you're going to want to get off of I-10. You're probably not going to take 49 because the hurricane is going to hit that path north. One of the options is to take I-10 east towards Baton Rouge, towards Covington, and get out of the way of the hurricane. Well, if we're shut down to one lane, that traffic arguably would cover the entire Acadiana spillway. I mean, just, think about that, where you would leave Lafayette and you'd be in traffic the whole way. So that's something they've got to address. And they're going to say they're going to do some work to some surface roads and increase traffic flow. Well, we haven't seen it, and they're planning on doing this interstate project. So if they're going to do that, they better get on it and they have to relay that message to the people of District 68. And I'll be there the whole way to be one of those people. If you can convince me, I'll go along with it, but I am 0% convinced so far.
Well, I can see that that is a message that would resonate with voters of District 68, because I have heard a lot of hand wringing about the infrastructure. I've heard about some of the city council members who have promoted the plan that you're very much against. So, what other messages would you say, besides the infrastructure one, are resonating with voters the most?
I think one of them is that top of that stool I mentioned on insurance. I was proud to be one of the early backers of our commissioner-elect, Tim Temple. I thought his business background, just like mine, plays well into what he's trying to achieve. And we've already seen that. He's put forth now his transition committee. He's going to focus on 5 areas. He has 5 leads for each one of those. They're going to have a committee. They have 30 days listening, then a 30-day report back session. And anytime you hear Tim talk about this, he'll tell you, we do several things in Louisiana on the insurance side that no other state does. Now, if we were the best insurance state, you would say, well, that's why we do it that way. Well, unfortunately, we're bottom 5 in every poll. So if we're the only state that does that, how about we don't do that anymore, and we do something to allow competition to be here in Baton Rouge and Louisiana? That's what's going to drive our insurance costs down the most, is allowing the business people, the insurance carriers, to want to do business in Louisiana. Right now, they don't have to do business in Louisiana. And if we keep scaring them off with our regulations and being the only state that does things a certain way, they're not going to come here. No competition means everyone's going to, this is a scare move here, but imagine if everybody wasn't citizens. That would be just absolutely terrible. We need the private sector here. We need those business people to come to Louisiana. I think he's going to do that, and I look forward to helping him in the legislature. He's going to need some help to get some laws passed, and I think we're going to get that done for him.
Yes, he'll need some help from businessmen and businesswomen who have practical backgrounds rather than the bureaucratic morass that too often characterizes the legislature. It's very refreshing to hear you talk about practical solutions rather than bureaucratic doublespeak and studies and all the rest of it. I can't tell you how refreshing that is. I want to ask you about another issue, Dixon, that concerns the citizens in our district here, and I'm sure across Louisiana, and that is about the possibility, and hopefully it's not a distinct possibility, but I don't really trust our government, particularly the ones who brought us the lockdowns in 2020, all the pressure to get the COVID vaccines, the masks, the stay-at-home orders, the quarantines, all of that, to us and to our listeners, was a gross violation of people's constitutional freedom and individual liberty. How, on a personal level and on a professional level as a legislator, would you respond if the government attempts something like that again?
Yeah, I think with this new legislature, obviously our new governor, I think you're going to be very hard pressed to ever see us come down on individual liberties like that again. It was so frustrating. I do a lot of work with LSU and what LSU was trying to make those kids do, and even the high schools around the state. And we're seeing the effects of that now, too, where those school children weren't around other children, were told they couldn't be certain places. They missed out on social skills, on growing up together, and things like that. And one of the things about those individual liberties and mandates is, I'm one of those guys. I sued LSU a couple years ago. This was a public records case to hold them accountable, but you won't find me scared to bring that up if we were to have the governor, which, like I said, I don't think Governor-elect Landry would ever do that, but I'm not going to be scared to call him out and bring him to court and say, you can't do this. This violates our rules and what we do. You cannot do this. So you're not going to get that from me, and I'm going to be there the whole time to stand strong for our individual liberties.
Yeah, and you never know, Dixon. Obviously, Governor-elect Landry will be serving for 4 years. You don't know what happens in a second term, and if you're successful and run for re-election, you may well be in a situation where there's a Democrat governor and you're having to stand in the breach and defend our freedom. So it's good to know that is your fundamental position and how you feel on that.
I hope it doesn't come to that.
Me too. Me too.
Every time I'm around my house, or I even cleaned up my car a little bit the other day and I found a mask, I just have to kind of look at it and be like, we were so dumb to go along with all that. It's just
Yeah.
unbelievable what we thought these little cloths that everybody was wearing were even going to do. But we saw, when you don't have accountability of the elected officials and even the appointed officials, right? Dr. Fauci up there, and now all the truths and lies we're seeing that he did. If you don't have someone that's strong-willed to hold them accountable and say, hey, I hear what you're saying, prove it to me. Make it make sense. If it doesn't make sense to me, that famous line, explain it to me like I'm a second grader and
Yeah.
make it make sense. And if you can't do that, then we're not going to go along with it.
Amen.
Amen. And if it's not constitutional, we still won't go along with it. People can make their own personal decisions about how they want to operate their families and their lives. We don't need the government to tell us how to do anything.
Yeah, personal decision. Leave it up to the families. Families are going to know best in those situations. And you mentioned the Constitution there. I'm super proud. I'm a constitutional scholar of Senator Kennedy. He was my constitutional law teacher at the LSU Law School. So I got to learn firsthand from our senator of what the Constitution means, its powers, and all that. And I'll never be shy to name drop, as I call him, Professor Kennedy, if I'm at the legislature.
Fantastic. Well, speaking of constitutional, in terms of the next couple weeks ahead, you're obviously going to head to head with an opponent, Belinda Creel Davis, who's I believe a Democrat. How would you differentiate yourself from her? I mean, you said you're a strong constitutionalist. That's probably a good starting point.
I think there's a few differences. Of course, yeah, she's a Democrat. I'm a Republican. She was appointed to the Bessie board by John Bell Edwards. She serves there now in that capacity. She ran 4 years ago as a Democrat. And I think you'll just see the difference of a business-minded person that wants to cut taxes, cut regulations, versus a Democrat that likes taxes and likes to have more bureaucracy. That'll be the main difference between the two of us. And I think the people of District 68 will know it's a clear choice that they want less government interference. And that's what I provide as a candidate. And a vote for me will mean that.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, Dixon, I have the opportunity, the dubious privilege of receiving your opponent's mailers because I'm actually in your district, and all I can do is corroborate emphatically what you just said. This looks like a who's who of a bureaucrat and the kind of things that she would be pushing and wanting. And so, I'm confident that the voters will see the very clear distinctions between you and her, because believe me, they are very, very clear.
It's amazing to me that there are still people in this country who think that the government is going to be able to solve any problems. I think it just baffles the mind. What have they solved so far to date? Let's just come up with, I defy you to come up with one.
Yeah. Well, Dixon, I know you're familiar. That's so true, Danielle. And Dixon, I know you're familiar with this. Reagan said the scariest words an American citizen can ever hear is a sound, is a knock on the door, and then you answer the door and say, "Hello, I'm from the government, and I'm here to help."
Yeah.
So that is really a sort of speaks to where we come down on government and sort of the skepticism that we have about most anything that government does. Dixon, do you have any final words here about, let's say that I'm going into the voting booth. What do you want your voters in this district to be thinking about when they're walking in to go vote in this election?
I'd want them to be thinking about, I'm going to vote for the young man that's a business-backed conservative Republican. He's endorsed by Governor-elect Jeff Landry. He's endorsed by Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser. He's endorsed by the current Republican that serves in that seat, Scott McKnight. He was endorsed by the Louisiana Committee for the Conservative Majority, and many, many more. But that's the kind of person that I want at the legislature representing me, and not only representing me, but that's the kind of person that I think we need to help be on that ship to turn it around and get Louisiana back growing positively for all the people of Louisiana.
Fantastic. Well, we endorse you, and I believe Chris will be voting for you. How can our listeners learn more about you, Dixon? Where can they look more into your campaign?
Yeah, www.dixonmcmakin.com, DixonMcMakin.com. Sign up to volunteer, sign up to donate, sign up to get our emails. 2 weeks from now, I'll have another one of my Bacon with McMakin events in the morning. One thing I heard from so many people was, once people are elected, they quit coming around. They quit being around people. And I told them, I was like, I'm going to, every month forever, while I'm elected, we're going to do Bacon with McMakin, at least. Of course, there's so many other events we go
What are
to,
you baking?
yeah, come have bacon. Who doesn't like bacon? And come enjoy some. Let's talk about the issues. And we're going to do that going forward forever and ever. So get on that email list. We can email you when and where that happens. And then, of course, the most important thing is if you live in the district like Chris does and his wife and his neighbors, you go vote. If you don't live in the district, you probably do know somebody in District 68, and tell them to go vote for me on November 18th, just 25 days away.
Amazing.
Dixon, that is so well said, and I absolutely will be voting for you. And I'm looking forward to calling you my representative right here in District 68. And I'm very, very proud to have endorsed you, and just very proud of what you stand for, not just in terms of your decision to run for public office, but for your commitment to bettering your community generally. And I will always associate you with Fraternus and everything you do in that. And I know that you have many other volunteer enterprises that you engage in, but that one to me means an awful lot. I do need to ask you one final question here before I let you go, because this is something that we hear. If there's any universal complaint or criticism of politicians in general, it is that they run for office on positions and on platforms that are consistent with the values in their district. And then often they get there, and I can tell you that I have seen it with my own two eyes because of the voting records that we've looked at so closely and so deeply on the part of so many of these incumbents. What do you tell voters who say, well, why would Dixon McMakin be any different than many of the other legislators who get elected on one platform and then they get there and they become different people and allow themselves to become either corrupted through special interests or allow themselves to fall victims to self-enrichment because of what they can gain in political office? I just want you to have an opportunity before you go to explain why that is not anything that anybody needs to worry about when it comes to Dixon McMakin.
Yeah, great question, Chris. And I think the biggest difference is on every politician's website, you'll see issues. And most of the issues are for Republicans. We know what they are. I mentioned them earlier, the big three: crime, education, jobs, and insurance. But on my website and what I talk about are pillars, almost like religious virtues: efficiency, effectiveness, accountability, and transparency. And that's what I'm going to use going forward. But that's also what I expect every person that votes for me or is a constituent of mine to look back at me with. And we've talked about this previously. I want no one to hold me more accountable than myself. I'll do it more than anyone. I know that. But I want every constituent, like we've talked about, Chris, you hold me accountable when you see something that you don't like. And we're going to have to be there and talk through those. But if you are consistently doing that and consistently calling upon your colleagues to be more efficient, more effective, holding them accountable and transparent in state government, and you're having people do that to yourself, I don't think I'm going to be able to fall into those evils that we've seen other politicians do in the past. So I only have one person in my family that's a lawyer or a politician, and it was my mom's uncle from Tennessee. So this is not something where it's just in my blood to go be a politician like that. Truly doing it to be a political servant, to represent my family, my friends of District 68. And I know they're going to hold me accountable. I'm going to hold myself accountable. And that's something unique you'll have with me amongst any of the others. And I'm looking forward to making everybody proud.
What a pleasure to have you on today, Dixon. Thank you for joining us. We are rooting for you, going to be pushing hard for you. Godspeed and on to victory, my brother. Have a great day.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys. Vote for Dixon.
Thanks, Dixon. Chris, what a genuine guy.
Yeah, I'm just very, very impressed with his commitment and his convictions. And I tell you what, Danielle, there isn't really any choice in this election. It is just a no-brainer. Not only because Dixon is a true conservative, but because his opponent is an unapologetic leftist who was appointed to, as Dixon said, to the Bessie board by John Bell Edwards. And for many of our listeners, they don't know, the Bessie board is the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. They are the policy arm of the entire Louisiana public school system. When it comes to curriculum, when it comes to what's injected into the curriculum, comes to how teachers are qualified. And this opponent of Dixon has consistently opposed keeping nefarious and harmful concepts out of our education system. She's always voted with the school boards and the big special interest unions, and always voted against the parents and parental choice and against transparency on the Bessie board. She's been a consistent thorn in the side of parental rights and constitutional governance in Louisiana. And we know that. Katie knows that because she's been there and she's seen her votes. And so there just isn't any choice in this election. And certainly we have every reason to believe that Dixon will come through with the win in November. I think it's November 18th, right?
November 18th, yeah. And one of the things I really liked about him, Chris, was impressed by, was something that we're kind of picking up on. There's a type of candidate that makes it very clear that they have nothing to personally gain from running, right? He's involved in so many things, volunteer-wise and business-wise and other commitments. He doesn't need the extra headache of every friend and neighbor calling him about all the problems they're having and about whether he's doing a good job or not. So I just really admire people who are willing to step into that role, people who really, could make more money or better invest their time perhaps. If he's investing time into young men. I'm not saying a better investment, but you could make the argument it could be a better investment. But in terms of the future of our state and kind of standing in the gap for us, we need good candidates like him. And I think if he makes it, we stand to have such a fantastic class of freshmen, really, that we've talked to who are chomping at the bit to clean some things up.
Absolutely. It's so well said, Danielle. And having these candidates who are all willing to come on the record and talk about their position and their philosophy and their vision, knowing that they're going to be held accountable for what they represent and what they say before they get elected, really, to me, speaks to the sincerity of their commitments. And Dixon doesn't need this office. You're right. He's very successful in what he does in the private sector. He doesn't need a potential headache to go in and serve as a legislator and have to deal with complaints from constituents about traffic problems. So that's all I need to know that Dixon's not doing this for any kind of self-enrichment or self-aggrandizement. He's doing it because he's very service-oriented and really wants to make a difference. So just very proud to have endorsed him, and I'm glad the State of Freedom is behind him and supporting him.
Yes, absolutely. And if people would like to support candidates like Dixon, you can visit lacag.org. And Chris, why don't you share the P.O. box as well?
Sure. It's LACAG, P.O. Box 64952, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70896. Our resources help us to promote and assist candidates like Dixon and others who are running for office with the ultimate goal of returning our legislature to the citizens and making it accountable to the citizens. So if you can support LACAG and donate to LACAG, it will be a very, very wise and prudent investment, knowing that we are on the front lines, holding these leaders accountable and changing our state.
Yes. And if listeners are interested in supporting the State of Freedom, they can do that at our website, freedomstate.us. We appreciate any feedback, any recommendations, and certainly financial support as well. If you're interested in advertising, you can just drop us a line at info@freedomstate.us. And we have a new opportunity for any listener who may already be investing in precious metals or who may be interested in investing in metals or even starting a home-based business in that industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, or you can even get involved on the selling side if you're interested in that. If you are interested in purchasing metals, you can do that at metalstacks.com/dwalker. That helps me out. I get the commission. And if you're interested in learning about network marketing aspects, you can email me at danielle@freedomstate.us.
What a great, great opportunity, Danielle. And what a great opportunity once again to be with you today. And it always seems like the time just flies by because I enjoy working with you so much. I enjoy what we're accomplishing and how we're advancing. And I know that each day, with God's grace, fortitude, and courage, we will continue to advance the cause of freedom in Louisiana.
We will. Thanks, Chris. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to The State of Freedom, LLC at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.